Broadcasting the information the mainstream media won't touch. This is The Richie Allen Show in association with DavidIke.com.
Now, you might know this, you might not. If you've paid attention to George, you'll know some of this. If you've paid attention to David's books over the last few years, you'll know this. Doincourt has a history of child trafficking, child abuse, murder, corruption. This is the corporation now which has a $3 billion contract with the US government. Now, the crimes of Doincourt were covered up by a succession of very, very high up, very prominent, big-name politicians. So we'll talk to George about that in the second hour. And we'll get an update on Braverman, I suppose, from George as well. Broadcasting live, as I said already, but I'll say it again because these broadcast partners of ours are terrific. DavidIke.com. Bookmark the headlines page on DavidIke.com. We're on Fab Radio 2. We are on alternatecurrentradio.com and TuneIn Radio. Now, as it's Thursday, much later on at 2 a.m. Friday morning, a few hours away from now, Alternate Current Radio's flagship programme, The Boiler Room, with Hesh and Spore and a cast of thousands, will broadcast later on, 2 a.m. UK time. If you do the maths, that's 9 p.m. Eastern time, and it is 6 p.m. Pacific time. Check out alternatecurrentradio.com for details there. Must say I was pleased today to get a text message from Emma Ibbitson, the producer of Traffic 2 and Traffic. And Emma said, having been on the programme, she was happy to see that orders were coming in today for the film Traffic 2. I'm delighted to hear that. Not for any vanity reasons whatsoever, but I'm delighted that you listen to Emma on the programme and you think it's important, as I do, to support this film by buying it, watching it and encouraging others to do the same. Terrific show last night. Wonderful woman. Go to PeteMiddletonPictures.co.uk/traffic-2 or just go to PeteMiddletonPictures.co.uk. Follow the links to Traffic 2. You can't miss it. And buy that film, the follow-up to the greatest expose there's ever been done, ever been committed to film of the forced adoption industry. And that was, of course, the original film Traffic, which proved very controversial for obvious reasons. So great to hear from Emma last night. And I wish her continued success with the campaigns, with her own personal story, but also with the success of Traffic 2. Go to PeteMiddletonPictures.co.uk and please purchase that film. Right. So, what's going on then? Well, the big story, according to the... By the way, before I go into the European Union and Europol and why we're basically exposed to the worst terrorists in the world by leaving the European Union, which is being spun today, I must mention that just as I was coming on air, there was another bizarre press conference in DC, Donald Trump addressing the press, acknowledging that because of the way Michael Flynn had treated the vice president, he had to be asked to resign his post. This from the same guy who accused the mainstream media of hounding Michael Flynn out of his job only a few days ago. Bizarre press conference from Trump. I suppose they will become increasingly more and more bizarre as time goes on. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about him today. So leaving the European Union is going to leave us vulnerable to attack. Who says this? Well, the head of Europol, Rob Wainwright. He's an English guy. Now, the European Police Office, right? Europol, that's what it is. It's basically the law enforcement agency of the European Union. That's what Europol is. Europol handles criminal intelligence and it handles the combating of serious international organised crime. How does it do that? It says by cooperation between the relevant authorities of the member states. Big story today, according to the mainstream media. This guy, Wainwright, is saying that leaving the EU is going to leave us exposed to attack. Sky News then today with the story. Sky News.
Very good afternoon. There's a warning today that Britain could be more vulnerable to terror attacks unless UK police forces secure close ties with their European counterparts after Brexit. Speaking exclusively to Sky News, the head of Europol, Rob Wainwright, says the British government must secure access to intelligence sharing once we leave the European Union. And he warned that groups like ISIS could try to use President Trump's tough rhetoric to aid their recruitment drive. From Europol's headquarters in The Hague, our senior correspondent Michelle Clifford reports.
Michelle Clifford reported, and then we heard from Wainwright himself. This is what he had to say.
I've been doing this job for 8 years, and I've seen how threats of terrorism, organised crime, have certainly become much more global, and how, therefore, the need for greater international police cooperation is absolutely essential to keeping us safe. It is important for Britain to get this right. It is about the security of the country. There is the possibility for associate membership. There still has access to very many capabilities here, but one that doesn't have direct access to a database, for example. And then you consider other instruments of cross-border police cooperation in the EU, such as the European arrest warrant, the access to the Schengen information system, which is the largest security system in Europe. And once again, there are complications around how a non-EU member state might access those. All of that is up for grabs in the negotiations.
So there should be some sort of associate membership of the European Union, said Wainwright. Now, he then said that the travel ban, the attempted travel ban by Donald Trump, and the language used around travel bans actually inspired groups like ISIS.
I certainly think that many terrorist groups in recent years, and that includes ISIS now, are sensitive and are adept at turning the words against us, certainly, as a way of maybe mobilising anti-Western feeling. Now, the extent to which they might do it in this case, I don't know, maybe they will try, but it has been part of the techniques, the tools of the trade, I think, that terrorists have used in the past.
He expects continued cooperation between America and Europol fighting terrorism. But in the future, there will be no British boss to deal with. Only someone from an EU member state can hold the post.
To do the job that I've been doing, you have to command the authority and respect, not just of amongst your staff, but of a much wider community at a political level as well as a police level, and for that you need to be, I think, part of a full member of the European Union.
Doesn't get any more blatant, does it? You need to be a full member of the European Union. If not, you are vulnerable to terrorist attacks. You won't have access to information. You won't be able to see this. You won't get a password to a database and all of this nonsense from Rob Wainwright. What do all the countries around Europe who are not in the European Union do about that? Do you know what they do? They have conversations amongst one another. The heads of the national police forces in these countries will regularly discuss any pressing information they have on any imminent attack. That's the way it happens. So I suppose the only way to qualify this, or the only way to explain this, and I know sometimes we do sound like a broken record, but it's important that we do this because the massive commercial media, which has the attention of largely most of the public, we don't, not yet anyway. When we take over the world, we will. Of course not, but they have the attention of people. This is what they're telling people. We have to put the other side of it in the absence of it on the news, because neither the reporter who interviewed Wainwright nor the anchor at base Kay Burley, neither of those people are asking serious questions of people like Rob Wainwright. Wainwright says we're in danger. Now, he didn't say it today, but in other interviews he said we are in mortal danger. And I've played those clips in the past. Mortal danger by severing ties with Europe. At the very least, your media should be questioning these claims and asking for some sort of proof. I say now, as I've said all along, since June 23rd, I was surprised, like everybody else, that the vote wasn't rigged and that people voted to leave the European Union. From then on in, they are working probably night and day on ways to keep the UK in the European Union. And I say again, I reckon by sometime in 2018, we'll have another referendum. That's what these people are calling for. Another referendum. You know, we heard one of the leading, one of the front runners in the French presidential election, Emmanuel Macron, basically saying that he expects after the next general election that there will be another referendum, a rerun of the referendum here. That's what's going on. 13 minutes past the hour. To another matter entirely, Ashton Kutcher is an actor. You might know him from various comedy films. I think he's had a very successful sitcom in recent years. I can picture it now. It's not 2.5 Men, so it isn't. It's something like that. And he's also, and this came as news to me, I didn't know this, he's also the co-founder of a company called Thorn. Now, Thorn describes itself as digital defenders of children. Kutcher testified before the US Senate yesterday that new technology must be developed to stop online sex trafficking.
I've seen video content of a child that's the same age as mine being raped by an American man that was a sex tourist in Cambodia. And this child was so conditioned by her environment that she thought she was engaging in play. I've been on the other end of a phone call from my team asking for my help because we had received a call from the Department of Homeland Security telling us that a 7-year-old girl was being sexually abused, and that content was being spread around the dark web. And she had been being abused, and they'd watched her for 3 years, and they could not find the perpetrator, asking us for help.
Now that is one of the most extraordinary things I've ever heard in my near 20-year career as a journalist. What an exaggeration that is, you might be thinking. No, it's one of the most extraordinary things. Maybe I am exaggerating slightly. Kutcher said Homeland Security got in touch with his company to say that they'd been watching a young girl for 3 years being abused by an American in the United States. And the images and the videos were being passed around the dark web for 3 years. And Homeland Security got in touch with Kutcher's company to say they couldn't do anything about it. Now, I'm not casting any doubt on the validity of what Kutcher said or his belief that that happened. But that's an extraordinary thing if it's true. And surely Kutcher would smell a rat right there. Surely Kutcher would be saying, well, Homeland Security have enormous resources at their disposal. Number one. Number two, what is Homeland Security doing? Spending 3 years observing somebody raping a child on videos. 3 years. An organisation set up to defend the homeland. What a claim that is. Now, I've not seen the entire testimony, nor have I seen the questions from the various politicians on the panel. But I doubt very much any of them asked them to explain that. That is incredible. Maybe when Kutcher reflected on it later on, maybe if Kutcher was to read about the Franklin Credit Union scandal, maybe if he was to read about Lawrence C. King, it might occur to Kutcher that if somebody is openly molesting a child and putting videos around an American citizen that can't be caught by Homeland Security, who shouldn't even be looking into it anyway, because it's none of their business, well, maybe that person committing those acts has maybe got friends in high places. Extraordinary. Extraordinary. When I saw that today, when it came across my desk today, I couldn't believe it. I thought, what's going on there? Homeland Security phoned us and told us they'd been observing a guy for 3 years raping a child and passing videos of those rapes around the internet. Ashton Kutcher, contacted by Homeland Security. Just think about it. Roll that over in your mind a few times. Might mention this to my guest in the second hour of the programme. Might get into this in the second hour of the show. It's exactly 18 minutes past the hour. And just finally for now, story today that might not have come to your attention, because I don't believe it's been given a lot of coverage by the BBC or Sky. In fact, I don't think they've covered it at all. And that is the Joseph Rowntree Foundation has carried out a study that shows millions more people in Britain are struggling to make ends meet since the financial crisis. And the study predicts the situation will drastically worsen over the next few years as inflation spikes. This is what the Joseph Rowntree Foundation found. 30% of the population, that's 19 million people, are now living below the minimum income standard. 30% of the population. The number living below the minimum income standard has risen by 4 million in the last 6 years. 4 million in the last 6 years. 11 million people in the UK have incomes below 75% of the minimum income standard. And these 11 people are at a very high risk of poverty. The study found 8 million people are just about managing to get by. Imagine, just hanging on in there. I mentioned this on the show one night, and I wasn't being disingenuous. I was being honest. I said, you, dear listener, and me are in the same boat. If we go 2 months or 3 months without a paycheck coming in, we're on the streets, right? Now, this minimum income standard is a benchmark calculated by the Centre for Research and Social Policy at Loughborough University. It's based on extensive surveys of people in the UK, extensive surveys asking people what they believe is a reasonable income. Now, the minimum income standard in 2016 for a single person of working age was £286.53 per week before bills. That works out at just under £15,000 a year. For couples, it was £353 a week, or £18,500 a year. For a couple with 2 kids, it was about £40,300 a year. But just to repeat, and nobody, this is a peer-reviewed study, 30% of the population in the UK, that is 19 million people, are now living below the minimum income standard, meaning that they go to bed and they can't sleep for worry, for stress of whether they're going to be able to pay the gas and electricity bill, whether they're going to be able to pay the council tax bill, whether they're going to be able to get a raise, whether their work situation is going to improve in order for them to gain that extra few bob to basically hang on in there. Amazing. I think my mate on the Isle of Wight coined the phrase, the Hunger Games Society. Well, there you have it. 19 million people now in the UK struggling to get to the end of the month